After funding my parents' bills for 7 years, my brother said, "You don't even have kids, it wasn't a big deal," when they gave my chair to his girlfriend. I opened my banking app and stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the transfer cancellation button. The casual cruelty of those words hit me like ice water. 7 years of quietly covering their mortgage payments, utility bills, car insurance, and medical expenses. And this was how they saw me. Not as their son who'd sacrificed vacations and personal goals to keep them afloat, but as some childless cash machine who should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention they threw my way. The shock was giving way to something colder, more calculating. I'd flown cross-country on Christmas Eve, spending $540 on a last-minute ticket because I thought family mattered. I'd left my corporate office Christmas party early, the one where bonuses and promotions were quietly discussed over drinks, because I wanted to be home for once. And I'd walked into their dining room, with snow still melting in my hair, carrying Dad's favorite whiskey, only to find a pink Post-it note stuck to the back of what used to be my chair. Reserved for Troy's fiancé, in Mom's handwriting. Standing there like some unwanted guest in a house I'd been paying for, watching Mom shrug and say, "We figured you'd be fine standing." With that same dismissive smile she'd perfected over the years, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just about a chair or a thoughtless comment. This was the culmination of decades of being taken for granted, of being seen as the reliable one who would always bend, always accommodate, always pay. Troy lounged on the couch next to his girlfriend of 3 months, smirking as he delivered his verdict about my childless status like it explained everything, like it justified treating me as less than human. The strategic part of my brain, the part that had built a successful IT consulting firm from nothing, was suddenly fully engaged. I was analyzing angles, calculating costs, measuring the true scope of what had been done to me and what I had the power to do in response. The pause that followed felt eternal. Everyone was looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to swallow this latest humiliation with the same quiet resignation I'd shown for years. But something had crystallized in that moment. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I was their reckoning. My background in corporate restructuring had taught me to recognize patterns of financial abuse long before most people would even acknowledge them. I'd spent 15 years helping companies identify internal threats, toxic partnerships, and resource drains that masqueraded as family loyalty. My consulting firm, Strategic Financial Recovery, specialized in helping business owners extract themselves from exploitative relationships with partners, family members, and investors who contributed nothing while taking everything. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd become an expert at solving exactly the problem I'd been living with my entire adult life. I had $3 million in net worth, built through careful planning, strategic investments, and most importantly, the kind of methodical thinking that my family had never bothered to understand or respect. My house was worth $900,000 and completely paid off. My retirement accounts held $1 to million. I had liquid investments worth another $600,000 that could be mobilized at a moment's notice. But money was just one advantage. My professional network included the best financial attorneys, forensic accountants, and tax specialists in the region. These weren't casual business contacts. They were people who'd worked with me for years on complex cases involving family financial manipulation. When you've helped someone save their company from a relative trying to steal everything, they remember. When you've protected someone's assets from a spouse planning financial devastation, they take your calls immediately. More crucially, I understood exactly how these situations played out because I'd guided dozens of clients through identical scenarios. The entitled family member who thinks success obligates infinite generosity. The parents who enable the worthless child while exploiting the responsible one. The casual cruelty disguised as family dynamics. I'd seen it all, documented it all, and developed systematic approaches to ending it permanently. The financial support I'd been providing wasn't just generous, it was comprehensive. I covered their $3,200 monthly mortgage payment. I paid their car insurance, health insurance premiums, utility bills, and even their streaming services. Last year alone, I'd transferred over $65,000 to various family accounts, usually with vague requests for help getting through a tough month that had somehow stretched into permanent arrangements. Troy's various failures had cost me even more. When his ski equipment rental business collapsed, I'd covered $12,000 in debts to prevent him from declaring bankruptcy. When he needed therapy to find his direction, I'd paid for 8 months of sessions at $200 per week. When he'd lived with me rent-free for 9 months, I'd covered all his expenses while he figured things out with his previous girlfriend. The most galling part was how they had managed my generosity. Every transfer was treated as my obligation, never their good fortune. Every sacrifice I made to help them was minimized, while Troy's smallest efforts were celebrated as heroic achievements. When he'd held a part-time job for 3 consecutive months, they'd thrown him a dinner party. When I'd gotten promoted to senior partner at my firm, managing accounts worth over $50 million, I'd received a text that said, "Nice work." The pattern was clear and documented. My banking records showed years of one-way financial flow. My phone contained hundreds of text messages treating me like a customer service department for their financial needs. Most damaging of all, I had recordings of family conversations where they had explicitly discussed how much they could ask me for without triggering pushback, calculating exactly how far they could push their rich son before he stopped paying. Standing in that gas station parking lot, 31 minutes after walking out of their house, I made the first call that would change everything. Patricia Kellerman had been my attorney for 8 years, handling business contracts and helping several of my clients navigate complex family financial disputes. She answered on the first ring, despite it being Christmas Eve. "This is about your family, isn't it?" she said, after I'd explained the situation. "I've been wondering when you'd finally reach your limit." Patricia had seen the pattern in my financial records during business reviews, the consistent outgoing transfers that never had corresponding business justifications. She'd mentioned it subtly several times, but had respected my boundaries when I'd deflected. Our conversation lasted 2 hours. Patricia walked me through exactly how to protect myself legally while systematically dismantling the financial structure I'd created around my family. The key was documentation, timing, and making sure every action served legitimate purposes beyond just cutting them off. She connected me with David Reeves, a forensic accountant who specialized in documenting financial abuse patterns, and Jennifer Stone, an estate planning attorney who could restructure my assets to prevent future manipulation. David's analysis over the following week was comprehensive and damning. He'd identified over $180,000 in transfers over the past 3 years that met the legal definition of financial abuse within families. The pattern showed classic exploitation characteristics: escalating demands, emotional manipulation to prevent refusal, and punishment when I'd tried to establish boundaries. More importantly, he'd found evidence that Troy and my parents had been coordinating their requests to maximize extraction while minimizing my ability to track the total cost. The most shocking discovery came when David investigated their actual financial situation. My parents' combined income was $89,000 annually, significantly more than they had led me to believe. Their mortgage was actually affordable within their income, but they'd been using my payments to fund Troy's lifestyle and their own recreational spending. The emergency requests I'd been responding to were fabricated crises designed to guilt me into continued support. Troy's situation was even worse. While claiming to be broke and struggling, he'd actually been working steadily for 2 years at a job making $52,000 annually. He'd been using my financial support to maintain a lifestyle that included expensive hobbies, frequent dining out with his girlfriend, and a car lease that cost more than my car payment. He wasn't a victim of circumstances. He was running a deliberate con against his own brother. Jennifer's asset restructuring was elegant and bulletproof. Working within estate planning law, we created an irrevocable trust that served legitimate generational wealth transfer purposes while making my assets unreachable by family members seeking financial support. The trust structure would benefit legitimate charitable causes while protecting against the manipulation I had unknowingly enabled. The timing of these changes was crucial and required careful orchestration. Every transfer had to occur during periods when my family was behaving normally, giving them no grounds to claim I'd acted in response to family conflict. For 2 weeks after Christmas, I maintained perfect normalcy, calling for our usual check-ins, responding to their messages with typical warmth, all while systematically moving assets beyond their reach forever. But I wasn't just protecting myself defensively. Patricia had recommended a private investigator named Marcus Foster, who specialized in documenting family financial fraud. Marcus's surveillance revealed that Troy and my parents had been meeting regularly to discuss their strategy for managing me. They had spreadsheets tracking my income, my spending patterns, and optimal timing for financial requests. They'd been treating my generosity like a business plan, calculating exactly how to maximize extraction while maintaining the appearance of normal family relationships. The recorded conversations Marcus obtained were devastating. Troy explicitly discussing how to keep the cash cow happy while planning his wedding with my money. My parents debating whether asking for $5,000 or $7,000 would be more likely to succeed for their emergency roof repair that turned out to be completely fictitious. Most damning of all, their discussion of giving my chair away as a deliberate message that I shouldn't get too comfortable, thinking I was important to them beyond my financial utility. The systematic nature of their exploitation was breathtaking. They'd been running psychological operations against me for years, carefully calibrating their emotional manipulation to prevent me from recognizing the abuse while maximizing their financial gain. They'd turned family love into a business model where I was simultaneously the product and the customer, paying continuously for the privilege of being used. Armed with this evidence and protected by bulletproof legal structures, I implemented consequences that were swift, comprehensive, and permanent. The automatic transfers stopped immediately, cutting off $4,800 in monthly support. The insurance policies I'd been paying were canceled, leaving them responsible for $850 monthly, in premiums they'd forgotten they couldn't afford. The credit cards where I'd been listed as a guarantor were closed, eliminating their access to credit they'd been using freely. More strategically, I contacted the companies where they had accounts in my name or with my financial backing. The car dealership where I'd co-signed Troy's lease learned about his actual income and his deliberate misrepresentation of his financial need. Their lease was restructured with market rate terms that reflected his ability to pay, tripling his monthly payment. The mortgage company was informed that I would no longer be providing supplementary income information for future refinancing, forcing them to qualify based solely on their actual income. The professional consequences extended beyond just money. Troy's employer learned about his moonlighting activities that violated his employment agreement, activities he'd been funding with money he'd extracted from me. My parents' social circle discovered the truth about their financial situation when they could no longer afford to maintain the lifestyle they'd been presenting as normal. The elaborate facade they had built around being successful while secretly dependent on my support collapsed in a matter of weeks. Within 30 days, the consequences were cascading exactly as I'd predicted. Troy's car was repossessed when he couldn't make the higher payments. My parents' mortgage payment bounced for the first time in 7 years, damaging their credit score and triggering penalty fees they couldn't afford. Their social activities, which had depended on having disposable income I'd been providing, disappeared entirely. Most satisfying of all, they had to ask Troy's girlfriend's parents for help, revealing to her family exactly what kind of people they'd gotten involved with. But the personal consequences were even more devastating than the financial ones. Their friends learned the truth about how they'd been treating me when they desperately started reaching out to my professional contacts, looking for alternative sources of support. Their church discovered their systematic exploitation of their own son when they asked for emergency assistance. Their reputation in our hometown, which they'd cultivated carefully over decades, was destroyed when the reality of their character became public knowledge. Troy's relationship with his girlfriend deteriorated rapidly when she realized she'd been played as much as I had. Her parents, successful business owners themselves, recognized financial manipulation when they saw it and demanded she reconsider her engagement to someone from a family capable of such calculated abuse. She'd begun asking uncomfortable questions about why Troy had never mentioned his steady income when he'd been claiming poverty. Questions he couldn't answer without admitting to deliberate deception. The final resolution came 8 months later, when Troy's girlfriend broke their engagement and moved back to her home state. My parents were forced to sell their house and move into a modest apartment they could actually afford. Troy, unable to maintain his lifestyle or find another victim to exploit, was forced to take responsibility for his own life for the first time in his adult existence. Their systematic approach to using me had collapsed entirely, leaving them exactly where they would have been if they'd never manipulated me in the first place, minus the relationships they had destroyed through their greed. For me, the experience was professionally and personally transformative. My consulting firm gained 5 new clients specifically because word had spread about how effectively I'd handled sophisticated family financial abuse. The strategies I developed became new service offerings that proved invaluable to other high-net-worth individuals facing similar systematic exploitation. Most importantly, I'd proven to myself that the strategic thinking I applied professionally could protect me personally when applied with sufficient ruthlessness and precision. Troy now works in retail management, making $35,000 annually, finally living within his actual means. My parents live in a 2-bedroom apartment and have jobs appropriate for people their age, who never learned to manage money responsibly. None of them have had any contact with me since I blocked their numbers and moved to a different city. They learned, perhaps too late, that treating someone's love like a renewable resource while providing nothing in return isn't sustainable when that person has both the means and the knowledge to make the abuse stop permanently.